Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If becoming a mangaka in One Piece world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 801, Sabo's Letter. For Luffy and Ace, the news of Sabo's death struck like a bolt of lightning, much like the dragon's wrath that befell the nobles of Goa Kingdom. This is what every manga reader witnessed at that moment. Ace's outburst after hearing the news was expected, as was his desire to kill the culprit and avenge Sabo. But what was unexpected was Dayton's equally intense reaction, as she prevented Ace from doing something reckless. Meanwhile, Dayton remained in the same place, at Amazon Lily. Her response to the grim turn of events was also expected. Her heart ached deeply with sorrow. Sabo. Why did the author have to kill Sabo so early? It would have been great if this third brother had stayed alive. Dayton couldn't control her tears and could only keep wiping them away again and again. Despite the bitter scenes and the shocking event of Sabo's death, Dayton's crucial role in the manga, stopping Ace from doing anything foolish, was actually a source of pride for her. I feel so sad for Luffy. He experienced the loss of a brother at such a young age, and years later, he had to relive that same pain with Ace too. Luffy's life in the manga is pure tragedy. Little Hancock wiped her tears as she spoke, her eyes reflecting the image of young Luffy crying after receiving the devastating news. That's true. It seems fate took both of Luffy's older brothers. What a terrible storyline. It's truly disheartening. Even Gloriosa felt the weight of this tragic turn of events. Who would have thought that behind that big smile, there was such deep suffering? Shaki blew out a thick cloud of smoke from her cigarette as she reflected on Luffy's past. But why are we jumping to conclusions, everyone? We haven't confirmed if Sabo is really dead yet. Shaki narrowed her eyes after saying this. Considering Dragon and his revolutionary army were there, along with Sabo's previous encounter with Dragon, I don't think Sabo is just a passing character in the story with his ambition and personality. I see limitless potential in him. A noble who will bring down the nobles. What an amazing character he'll become as he grows. A wider smile spread across Shaki's face as she imagined such a scenario. But Aunt Shaki, that doesn't explain many things. For example, Sabo didn't appear at Marineford to save Ace. It's impossible he would miss such a critical event if he were still alive. That's definitely strange, but there could be many reasons why he didn't show up in the first place. I don't know. I just have this feeling that he's still alive, and I truly hope so. It would be a great comfort for Luffy. Shaki smiled sadly as she looked forward to the next chapter's events. At that moment, a letter arrived for Ace and Luffy. Chapter's events. Have you calmed down yet, Ace? The next morning, Dayton and her gang went out to check on Ace, who was tied tightly to a tree to prevent him from doing anything rash. Where's Luffy? The first thing Ace asked about was Luffy. He spent the whole night crying. He's asleep now. Dayton briefly described Luffy's state. Boss. This letter just arrived. At that moment, Dogura rushed over with a letter signed by Sabo. It's from Sabo. It looks like he sent a letter, right before he set out to sea. What? Ace, shocked, shouted, "Give it to me. I swear I won't go into the town." That letter's for us, right? Hearing that, Dogura untied Ace and handed him the letter. Ace began to read it. Ace, Luffy. You weren't hurt in the fire, were you? I'm worried about you, but I have faith that you're all right. Ace unfolded the rest of the letter to continue reading. I feel a bit bad telling you this, but by the time you read this letter, I'll already be out at sea. Things turned out this way, and it looks like I'll be setting sail ahead of you guys. As for where I'm going, anywhere outside of this country is fine by me. Once I arrive, I'll get stronger and become a real pirate. Once the three of us have become pirates, with more freedom than anyone else in the world. Let's meet again someday. Somewhere out there, in the wide, open sea, I know I'll see you both again. Ace stood on the hill overlooking the sea where they had made their promises together once. He continued to cry, tears pouring from his eyes. One more thing, Ace. I wonder which one of us is the oldest. It's a bit strange to have 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother, but this bond is my greatest treasure. Luffy may still be weak and a bit of a crybaby, but he's our little brother. Take care of him for me. The tears Ace had been holding back since the previous day finally fell into the sea at that moment. Batarilla. As Ace read Sabo's letter, Rouge was also reading it intently. It turns out they know how to read and write. Did Garp teach them? Or maybe it was Makino? Rouge wiped the remaining tears from her eyes, feeling that Sabo wasn't dead, that he was still alive somewhere, or maybe it was just a fleeting hope. When she mentioned reading and writing, she was referring to Ace, because Sabo, being from a noble background, had obviously learned these skills from a young age under the supervision of his biological parents. But Ace, who knew how to read the letter, hadn't lived in the same conditions as Sabo since childhood, so someone must have taught him, and it certainly wasn't Dayton or her gang. Rouge let go of this line of thinking, as she became immersed in the details of the next chapter. The title of the chapter was Efforts Toward Glory, and it was filled with emotional moments. Rouge experienced many emotional swings while reading this chapter. In the South Blue, this time at the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. What's the matter, Iva-chan? Inazuma, who saw Ivankov crying, was curious. It's nothing, just something got in my eye, Ivankov lied, feeling saddened by what happened with Sabo. It's all because of those damn celestial dragons, the scourge of this world. They always ruin good stories with their presence. Crocodile's hatred for the celestial dragons grew stronger than ever. This level of maturity from this boy terrifies me. I hope he stays alive somehow. I want him in the Revolutionary Army. Dragon, who had just finished cleaning up his homeland and returned as if he had only gone to the bathroom, was fascinated by how mature the boy named Sabo was. He was a mere 10 years old, yet he was as mature as an adult. This was exactly the type of person Dragon was looking for to join the Revolutionary Army. Boahaha. Well, what an exciting twist in the story. For some reason, Garp was far ahead in the plot, and it seemed like he had noticed something interesting. I want to get stronger so I can protect everything. These words were said by Luffy to Ace after Sabo's death. Don't you ever die, Ace. Luffy also said this while crying, not wanting to lose another brother. All these scenes caused a lump in the throats of readers at O'Hara's art store. It turned out that young Luffy had already predicted the future. This isn't a prediction of the future, it's a refusal to accept a future without his brother. Isn't that closer to the truth? Sadly, it seems he didn't become strong enough to protect everything. Now I understand why Luffy is hysterical before diving into his memories. In the end, Ace also died. This is heartbreaking. I hope Sabo isn't dead. His ship was destroyed, and his hat burned, but that's all we've seen. Maybe someone will save him, that's what I mean. I hope so too. Reader morale was at an all-time low, as it seemed the author had become addicted to crushing their spirits recently. No one expected that Luffy, as a child, would witness the death of his first brother, and years later, he would witness the death of his second brother. It was a true tragedy for Luffy. Chapter 802, Ace sets sail for the first time. Chapter's events. Let us take a brief step back in time. To the evening when the Tenryubito's ship arrived in the Goa Kingdom. In a place other than Dawn Island, the Revolutionary Army ship departed after replenishing its supplies. Did you see that person back there? With that huge face. Look at that. The ship is enormous, too. This island was Shimatsuki Village, where Zoro trained during his childhood. This is a small port town, in a certain region of East Blue. Dragon. You're late. How long did you plan to keep me waiting? Sorry. It seemed that Dragon was carrying someone in dire need of immediate medical attention. Ah. Hey. Somebody treat these wounds, quickly. This is terrible. After handing the injured one to someone for care, Dragon gazed into the distance and asked, "How are we doing for provisions?" "The people of the village dojo were kind enough to provide us with food," a certain subordinate responded to Dragon's question. "Let us set sail." We returned to Baltaigo. In Shimatsuki Village, East Blue. Inside the art store, Shimatsuki Kozaburo quietly looked at his son before asking, "Is this really our dojo?" After all, everything about this scene indicated that the village dojo the members of the Revolutionary Army were referring to was indeed their own. Even the shadow of the child Zoro, who was training intensely, was clearly visible. "It seems so," Kushiro replied. "It's not just us, but the entire village." Kushiro moved closer to his father and whispered softly. Kushiro indicated that everyone in the village had helped the Revolutionary Army replenish their supplies. "Why are you whispering like a bitch? What's so scary? Speak clearly so I can hear you," shouted Kozaburo. Kushiro's face turned red with embarrassment as his father scolded him loudly, making him wish he could dig a hole and disappear from embarrassment. Seeing this, Suna burst into laughter. She held her newborn Kuina in her arms, and her laughter made her look so gentle. "This means that the Revolutionary Army in the manga considers our Shimatsuki village a significant strategic ally." "That's good, at least it seems your counterpart in the manga isn't all that bad," Kozaburo said with a smile. "Oyaji, we don't want trouble with the world government. Don't forget that many cipher pole agents and hunters are present here. Don't act rashly." "That's why I'm lowering my voice," Kushiro regained his composure and explained to his father. "So what? This part of the world has nothing to do with the world government anymore. What can they do even if they find out we support the Revolutionary Army, not just in the manga but in reality as well, huh?" Kozaburo mocked his son's fear. "But Oyaji, the world government sends its hunters and agents for silent assassinations. The world is too big for the Hunters Guild to protect it entirely. I fear for the safety of my family." Saying this, Kushiro looked lovingly at the baby in his wife's arms and added, "Don't you fear for the safety of your granddaughter, whom you've longed for years to have?" "Ha! Even if the 5 elders themselves came to threaten her safety, I'd slaughter them all." It seemed like someone had touched a sensitive spot in the old man, Kozaburo, at this moment. In any case, the Shimatsuki family were not the only ones who realized that the village where the Revolutionary Army stopped was their current location. Many others recognized it easily. For instance, Roranoa Arisher and his wife, Tara, almost immediately recognized the child Zoro through his shadow alone. Kingdom of Sorbet. Inside the art store, Garp was laughing with pride at this moment. "Boa ha ha. What do you mean by going back to Baltaigo? With this poor performance, you want to retreat already? Your counterpart didn't put out the fire. Even though he saved many of the homeless from the blaze, that's not enough for you to win the bet against me." Dragon silently stared at his father, who seemed to be mocking him at this moment. "But since your counterpart seems to have saved Sabo from death, I won't take half of your wealth. That act alone is enough for me to show you some mercy," Garp said with a satisfied smile. "Why do you say my counterpart saved Sabo? Nothing has been shown yet. It could be someone else gravely injured." It wasn't just Dragon who was puzzled by Garp's explanation, even the other members of the Revolutionary Army present were bewildered. "Isn't it obvious? It's just a feeling that grows stronger over time," Garp smiled. "You're giving up your loot just because of a feeling?" Dragon smiled after hearing that. "Knowing yourself well enough, would you have let Sabo die if you were there?" "Of course not." "Well, I agree with you. It seems Sabo is on my ship now. Baltaigo Island will be the next place he awakens." Hearing that, everyone smiled. Fusha Village. It seems Ace and Luffy are doing well after Sabo's death. Makino smiled as she observed how Ace and Luffy continued to live after the incident as the months went by. Though they faced difficulties at first, didn't they? Father Merkar pointed out that it hadn't been easy for the duo to work as a team as they did when Sabo was with them. "That's true. It's sad to see the trio become a duo. Sabo was a good older brother to Luffy. Anyway, I'm glad to see laughter return to Luffy and Ace's faces after what happened. Oh my! It seems the years have passed in the blink of an eye, and now it's time for Ace to set sail for the first time. 7 years later. Ace is 17, and Luffy is 14. Luffy and the Dayton band stood at the coast of Mount Kalbo to bid farewell to Ace, who was setting sail for the first time. Good luck out there, Ace. You just wait. I'll make a name for myself in no time. Ace shouted from his boat. Ace, the son of the Pirate King, grown to adulthood with the world none the wiser, quietly set sail from the coast of Mount Kalbo. Ha ha ha. He's still waving, laughed Luffy. Dear me. What will old Garp say? Mayor Whoop Slap sighed as he recalled Garp. Boss. Meanwhile, the Dayton's gang, who had bid farewell to Ace, returned to Dayton's house. You're gonna raise him, Dayton. What? Whose kid is this, anyway? Dayton remembered the day Garp brought the newborn Ace here and forced her to take care of him. Young Ace has finally set sail. Is that right? Well, I'm sure I'll be getting a right earful from Garp now. He really was a hopeless brat. Oh, by the way. He left a message for you, one of her bandits said. What? Does that boy never miss an opportunity to complain? He says, thank you for everything, Dot. What the hell is that? Stupid idiot. Hearing that, Dayton burst into tears. Amazon Lily. This very scene was what made Dayton cry more than ever before, but despite that, the smile remained solid on her face. The hell is that? What kind of reaction is this? Why didn't you go to see him off? She wiped her tears as she said that, then added, obviously, you didn't want to see him leave, did you? Ha ha. That's right, I didn't expect Dayton and the manga to have such hidden love and affection. At first, I didn't think so. Gloriosa said with a smile. It turns out that Dayton was the true mother who raised Ace and Luffy and lived with them for many years. On the day she stayed behind with Ace to fight Blue Jam, I knew she considered Ace her son deep down, Shaki added with a smile as well. Now, I don't want to see her reaction to Ace's death. Dayton said sadly, remembering that this flashback was about to end. In the end, the events would return to the present, and Dayton would have to appear in the current story. It was expected. For the current Dayton, who admired her character in the manga and accepted her portrayal, seeing her reaction to Ace's death would be heartbreaking. It was obvious that it would be a difficult scene to witness. Chapter 803, Luffy sets sail for the first time. Chapter Events. And then, 3 years later. When Luffy turns 17. You're not going to see me off? At that moment, Luffy came to check why Dayton and the others weren't there to bid him farewell. Nah. If we were to come strolling down the mountain, while the village chief and Makino might not mind. The rest of the villagers would be scared stiff. No, you go on down there alone. Luffy understood and didn't push them further, saying, well, then. Thanks for everything, you guys. Don't say stuff like that, you'll make me blush. Luffy continued, saying, Dayton. You know I hate bandits. Shut your face, brat. Exclaimed Dayton. But you guys, I like. He added. Stop spouting nonsense and get out of here already. Damn it all. Tears welled up in Dayton's eyes, just as they did 3 years ago when Ace said his goodbyes. Ohara. Oh wow. They're all leaving one by one. Chicks won't stay chicks forever. The day will come when their wings grow long enough, and they'll want to fly away from the nest they grew up in, right? That makes sense. Unfortunately for Sabo, he didn't get the same time that Ace and Luffy had to grow wings big enough to carry him across the Grand Line. Who said that? Maybe in the coming chapters, the author will surprise us with Sabo appearing as a grown, mature man with an important role in the Grand Line. Really? That would be amazing if it happened. But it's unlikely. What will the future hold now, after we've delved into the past and discovered everything about Luffy? I wonder. Everything? We've only uncovered a little about Yuta, Dayton, and Sabo, and Ace whom we already knew about. I wanted to know who Luffy's mother is, and secrets like that are still a mystery. Oh man, I've always wondered about Luffy's mother's identity too. Is she still alive or not? And if she is, what's her background? Such secrets are what I'm most eager to learn. There are many secrets yet to be discovered. The readers in the art store were buzzing with excitement at the end of the great flashback that summarized many truths and revealed intriguing backstories. Rob looked at Robin, who was staring curiously at the last part of the flashback. He patted her head with a smile before asking, "What's on your mind, dear?" "So, is Sabo still alive?" Robin asked. "Didn't I make that clear enough?" "No, not at all. Nothing in this past suggests that." Well, what about this part of the events? Doesn't it seem suspicious? Rob flipped a few pages and pointed at the scene where the Revolutionary Army ship was last shown in the flashback. "Nothing suspicious," said Robin. "That's right. I deliberately drew that part vaguely. What about this? I'll tell you a secret." A look of surprise appeared on little Robin's face as she heard the secret her father told her. This was the kind of treatment only Robin deserved, and no one else. Dawn Island, outskirts of the Goa Kingdom, Fusha Village, Luffy's hometown. Luffy. Why don't you use my old fishing boat? Seeing Luffy wanting to sail with a small boat, one of the villagers tried to help him. No, I'm fine with this. This is how I'm gonna start out. But Luffy refused. What, in a little rowboat? Luffy didn't care. He looked up at the sky, raised his hands high, and shouted. Sabo. I hope you're watching. I'm finally heading out to sea too. He put his hand on his hat with a determined smile on his face. Sabo set out first. Ace set out second. I'll be the third, but I'm not gonna let them beat me. You just wait, Ace. I'll catch up with you in no time. Well, then. I'm off. Afterward, Luffy defeated the Lord of the Coast with a single punch, avenging what happened in the past. Dayton and the others, who were hiding behind a building, were shocked. He really has become strong, that kid. Taking out the Lord of the Coast in one hit, wow. All right. I'm off. I'm gonna be the Pirate King. End of flashback. Marineford. In the end, you're left alone after both your brothers died. Maybe you'll join them at my hands too, who knows? Sakazuki said with a grim expression after finishing the flashback. He was still bedridden due to the current Pirate King, who nearly killed him. Oh, what are you saying, Sakazuki? Your counterpart missed his one and only chance to kill Luffy. He won't get another opportunity. That kid is going to become so strong, and in such a short time. It's impossible to stop him. What happened will push him to surpass his limits, further and further. He's still saying he's going to be the Pirate King. As long as this story continues, it's only for that purpose. Only when this kid becomes the Pirate King will you have the chance to fight him then. After saying all that, Zephyr looked deeply into Sakazuki's eyes and asked with curiosity. Do you have the confidence to say you'll win and kill him at that time? Knowing that you almost died at the hands of the current Pirate King. Hearing that made Sakazuki recall the terror he felt when Roger surrounded him with that overwhelming haki back then. If it weren't for the 5 elders coming down and suppressing Roger, he wouldn't have been able to retreat with only one arm lost. Take it easy, Zephyr. No one knows how the manga's events will continue to unfold from this point onward, so calm down. Maybe Straw Hat will lose his will to advance any further. Losing his second brother might be shocking enough to break his resolve to become the Pirate King. He might lose his cheerful nature and awaken to the dark reality of the world. That way, he'll give up and won't continue any further. This time, it was Sakazuki who said all that. Zephyr looked at him calmly before responding, Sengoku, have you gone mad? We're talking about Luffy here. It's impossible for him to lose his true personality. Tsuru looked at Sakazuki and said, "The world after the war won't be the same as it was before. Pirates will change, and the Marines will change too. Our role is to see how this change will unfold, whether for better or worse." Sorbet Kingdom. So that's what happened. Boa haha. As expected of my grandson. Who else would dare to sail with a small rowboat other than Luffy? Garp laughed at the scene of Luffy sailing away in a small boat. He has no clue about navigation or the details of sailing. No wonder he ended up inside a barrel at the start of the manga, Dragon added with a smile. Hi ha. His bravery never ends, Ivankov also laughed. I see he values fair competition between him and his brothers. And he hasn't forgotten Sabo at all. What a man your son is, Dragon-san, Crocodile commented. They share a bond from childhood, the most innocent stage of life. So, of course, he'll never forget his brother, whom he believes to be dead. I bet the shock after he finds out that his first brother didn't die will be incomparable. Boa haha. You've done so much for your son behind the scenes. Anyone with a critical eye won't notice any of the great things you've done for him. Garp said as he patted Dragon's shoulder. He felt proud at that moment. The manga's memory took them back to the moment Luffy first set sail. However, the manga's continuous memory for over 500 chapters had shown here and there some of the things Dragon did for Luffy that only a few realized. Chapter 804, Dayton and Garp. On Fishman Island, back in the present moment, Jinbei felt a wave of sadness wash over him again. Here we go again. I wonder how Jinbei will handle the emotional storm of that destructive boy. Jinbei sighed deeply as he said this, his sorrow clear. Calmly, wisely, and with unmatched motivation. If those three traits combine, I believe your counterpart will do just fine. Fisher Tiger, who had previously enjoyed the flashback featuring the three brothers, replied thoughtfully. I believe your counterpart already possesses these three qualities. He remains incredibly calm, even in such a situation, and I see in him the wisdom of the entire Fishman race. I can't even imagine what he must have gone through in the past to develop such a strong character. Fisher Tiger had a keen eye, able to perceive the bitter scenarios hidden behind Jinbei's demeanor throughout the manga. I hope so, Jinbei murmured with growing sadness as he witnessed Luffy's outburst, where the boy shouted that he wasn't the Pirate King, but just a weak pirate. Turn the page already. Why are you still stuck on that scene, Jinbei? Just keep going, things won't stay as they are. Fisher Tiger noticed Jinbei had been staring too long at the last scene from the previous chapter's flashback and nudged him to move on. Ah, yeah. Jinbei turned the page to the next chapter titled My Little Brother. He skipped over the cover page, which featured him and Mihawk eating takoyaki, and went straight to the events of the new chapter. It seems Garp has already moved past the disaster. The opening scene of the chapter shows Garp's ship arriving at Fusha village. The villagers quickly rushed to get the latest news from him, especially about Luffy, who had once grown up among them. That's what it looks like, but clearly, he hasn't moved past anything, Fisher Tiger said with a heavy tone as the scene cut to a furious Dayton. Chapter's events. Garp-san, there's been another incident. A group of bandits came down from the mountains and took over Makino's bar. After ensuring that the surrounding seas were pirate-free and leaving a sign with Vice Admiral Garp's name as a warning to potential invaders, the villagers hurried to report the second incident. Bandits. Garp's familiarity with the situation was apparent from his tone. Stop. You mustn't. Oi, Garp. You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here again. Dayton wielded a massive wooden club and smashed it down on Garp's head with full force. Garp didn't dodge. Garp-san. Vice Admiral Garp. The Marines accompanying Garp quickly aimed their weapons at the enraged Dayton. Stand down, men. I know this woman. Garp held his bleeding forehead and ordered his men not to interfere. Damn you. You were right there in the thick of it all. They were right in front of you. Tears streamed down Dayton's face as she shouted her grievances at Garp. How could you let Ace die like that? Do you care more about your work than your family? Well, Garp. She continued to punch him mercilessly. And you call yourself a marine hero? Curl up and die, you worthless old fart. Now. That's enough, boss. Dayton's subordinate tried to intervene, but at that moment, Makino stepped in. Stop it, Dayton-san. Garp, still filled with sorrow, muttered, Makino. Garp-san saw the whole thing happen right in front of him, and still, he couldn't do anything to save them. This must be harder on him than any of us. Makino shouted, stopping Dayton in her tracks. No, Dayton's tears continued to flow. The one who's suffering the most is Luffy. You know how much he loved that brother of his, Makino. Makino, unable to hold back her own tears after recalling this, ran away. Amazon Lily. Dayton, a young and vibrant woman, couldn't control her tears at that moment. This scene affected her more than when she saw her counterpart fighting alongside Ace on the day of the Great Fire. I didn't expect this scene to be so tough. Wiping away her tears, Dayton couldn't believe she would one day see herself hitting Garp with such brutality and anger. I feel so relieved now after seeing Dayton beat Garp. Oh my, that was satisfying, Fufu Shaki chuckled as she patted Dayton on the head. That's right. For Garp to have done nothing to save Ace, only to cry and wail after his death, and to be stopped by Sengoku when he tried to kill Sakazuki, it's disgraceful. Gloriosa added with a smile, it's refreshing to see Dayton smash his old face. I bet Garp himself wants to punch his counterpart's face at this moment, Little Hancock chimed in. No, but Garp-san didn't really have a choice. We can't entirely blame him. We've seen the whole manga up to this point, and we know the hidden backstories and motivations that the characters within the manga don't. Garp doesn't deserve this treatment. Everyone knows he's in deep pain, and he had no power to save Ace or even Luffy. Dayton, in reality, was more reasonable and wise than her manga counterpart, who was driven by pure emotion. You have a point, dear, but that doesn't mean Garp didn't prioritize his career as a marine hero over saving Ace by rebelling against the marine, Shaki remarked. Sorbet Kingdom. Garp stared long and hard at the scene where Dayton struck him. His expression didn't change. You didn't hit him hard enough, Dayton. Unfortunately, you don't have any hockey. I wanted to see you crush his skull, but that's impossible. You're far too weak. Garp could feel Dayton's overwhelming grief at this moment of the scene. Sigh. She must have loved Ace and Luffy so much. It's truly heartbreaking to see how things unfolded in the manga world. Death is the end. It cannot be undone. We can only accept it. Our loved ones can only be retrieved from the underworld through rare loopholes, like in Brook's case. That's why I feel sorry for Luffy in the manga. Old man, I feel sorry for your counterpart as well, Dragon said, staring at his father with sympathetic eyes. I feel sorry for your counterpart too, my son, Garp sighed in response. Why do you feel sorry for my counterpart? What's wrong with him? Dragon asked, puzzled. You're in a worse state than I am. You're hiding like a rat, without the strength to do anything. Even your son is braver than you. Despite his weakness, limited time, and small crew, he's accomplished more than the Revolutionary Army has in all these years. From the Enies Lobby incident where he openly challenged the world government, to causing chaos at Impel Down, to single-handedly participating in the Summit War. These were all slaps in the face to the government, thanks to his courage and disregard for who his opponent truly was. You would never do that. You wouldn't choose to if given the chance. That means you're in a worse state than I am. Your counterpart believes he's too weak to stand up to the world government, doesn't he? Dragon remained silent for a long time after hearing his father's words. I heard Dayton is working with Rob these days. Maybe it's time for me to try married life again after my first failed attempt with your mother. This time, I'll have a braver son. Dragon's face turned red after the barrage of remarks from his father. Put. Crocodile suppressed his laughter so hard that his face also turned red. Chapter 805, Shanks's words. Of course, Luffy won't give up. He'll rise again and keep moving forward. That's how he's always been, even as a child. I'm sure of it. Dayton's gaze was fixed on the scene where her counterpart had screamed Luffy's name, urging him not to give up. This moment touched her heart once again, adding to the dozens of other scenes that had already moved her deeply. Yes, Dayton-san, there's no way Luffy would give up that easily. His crew is still waiting for him. Little Hancock clenched a small fist, speaking as if she were Luffy's own little cheerleader. Hearing Little Hancock's words, Shaggy spoke up, "Oh, speaking of Luffy's crew, I feel like I haven't seen them in ages. I bet their reactions to what happened to Luffy will be quite interesting." Goodness, that's true. It's been so long since the crew was last seen. All of this started when Kuma separated them from each other. Gloriosa remembered Zoro, Sanji, Nami, and the others at that moment. Given how much they love and are attached to their captain, they must be devastated by what happened to him. Dayton nodded in agreement after hearing that. Far away from the calm belt, in a hidden part of Jaya Island within a sea cave, Blackbeard's pirate ship was concealed from view. Zihahaha. It seems things are still looking grim for Straw Hat. Who would have thought he'd lose not just one brother, but two? A pirate king who couldn't save any of his brothers. Zihahaha. What kind of pirate king will you be, I wonder? Teach laughed wickedly after catching up on all the flashback scenes involving Luffy, Ace, and Sabo. He enjoyed how the events were tied together, showing how much Luffy loved his brothers, especially Ace, who grew up with him. Am I supposed to feel sad about these childish stories? How ridiculous. The Pirate King left his son to a marine hero, who then passed the responsibility to an old mountain bandit. No way a boy raised in those circumstances will live long. Shiryu spoke with sarcasm. It's ironic to see a child from a noble family, with all the wealth and authority, yet he found no peace until he died on the path of a pirate. As a king who becomes a pirate, I truly feel sorry for such a noble child. Jihahaha. Avalo Pizarro laughed after licking the last drop of sake from his lips. Of course, his words were mocking Sabo. Well, he was just a kid, and now he's dead. It would have been a pain if he stayed alive and came back for revenge against me for his brother's death. Zihahaha no, maybe that would have been interesting to see. The Moby Dick proudly emerged from the calm waters of the calm belt, leaving behind an endless fog as it re-entered the Grand Line, where stormy winds and rain welcomed her back. That rat tricked us, didn't he? Gorarara, I wonder where he's hiding. Should we ask the hunters for help? The rat Whitebeard spoke of was, of course, Teach. Do you want me to contact the hunters, Oyaji? Marco asked. Requesting a search from the hunters was the only way to find a needle in a haystack, given they had the resources needed. But as a great pirate crew, it would cost them a lot of berries to have the hunters work for them. Not yet. We have enough time to search. Teach won't keep running for the rest of his life. The day may come when he'll walk up to our door himself. What's this? Oh, this red-haired boy never ceases to surprise me. Whitebeard smiled. Oh Yaji. Marco was also stunned. This is Sphinx, my homeland, and this, my grave? At that moment, Whitebeard and his sons felt complex and mixed emotions as they witnessed this scene in the manga. Chapter's events. Meanwhile, in a far-off land. This is the latter half of the Grand Line. The New World. Red hair. I don't know how to thank you enough. Marco and Shanks stood before a cemetery, where many bodies had been laid to rest, marked with their swords and weapons. But the two most prominent and beautiful graves belonged to Edward Newgate and Portgas de Ace. No need for any of that. He may have been my enemy, but Whitebeard was a man worthy of respect. Even Sengoku understood that. Anyway, we ought to get going. After doing all he could for Whitebeard and Ace, Shanks was about to leave. Right. Thank you again. Marco didn't forget to thank him once more. If it weren't for Shanks, the Whitebeard pirates would have been finished with no chance of rising again. After bidding farewell, Shanks walked through a clear path amidst a large crowd of pirates and island residents. At that moment, he spoke to himself internally. Luffy. This must be terribly hard on you. I was shocked to hear about Ace's final actions. It's as though he were Captain Roger himself. There were times I wished the captain would run, or even cry. Listen, Luffy. It's through experiencing both victory and defeat, going wild and shedding tears, that a man truly grows. Don't be afraid to cry. Make it through this. Shanks's words and his remarkable demeanor left the Whitebeard pirate speechless at that moment. Marco wiped away a small tear that had formed at the corner of his eye, moved by the warm emotions of the moment. I never expected Redhair to have such a character. It seems he took care of everything, from transporting the corpses to burying them and even decorating the graves. What a man! Gorarara! I never expected to see the day when I, Whitebeard, would see my own grave. Not even in my wildest dreams did I imagine this. Whitebeard laughed heartily, shocking even his sons beside him. Certainly, seeing your funeral engraved in such detail is a shocking thing, Oyaji. Jozu seemed to be wondering about his father's true feelings at that moment. Well, it's not that shocking since I know I'll die one day. But seeing my grave, that's impossible. It only happened because of the One Piece manga. Gorarara. Now, do I let fate run its course, or do I continue chasing down the cause of all this to avoid that fate? I wonder. Shanks's words to Luffy made me realize so many things I hadn't noticed before. What a man, he seems more mature than Roger himself. Gorarara. Batarilla Island. Inside an art store, Roger's pirates, including Roger himself, were watching Shanks with complex emotions at that moment. Man, your counterpart did a great job, even if he was late to the war. Those words your counterpart gave to Luffy, who's going to hear them, I wonder? Why doesn't he go tell him directly? Luffy needs to hear that now more than ever, exclaimed Buggy. That's right, those are strong words of comfort. Luffy would really feel supported if he heard them from Shanks in such difficult times, added Gaban. What can he do? He doesn't have teleportation powers, you know. Shanks was annoyed by his comrade's sarcastic remarks about his counterpart at that moment. But he refocused on the chapter's content. The words of his mature self carried much more depth than that. They had the power to help even him, the younger version of Shanks in the manga. It's truly comforting to see that the one who buried my son Ace was you, Shanks. Roger smiled as he said that. Chapter 806, I still have my friends. Chapter's events. Leave me alone. Luffy shouted, stopping Jinbei from getting closer. I'm afraid that won't be possible. I can't stand by and watch you hurt yourself anymore, Jinbei said, refusing to step aside. It's my body. I can do whatever I want with it. Luffy exclaimed. In that case, Ace-san's body was also his own. It was his choice whether to live or die. Jinbei's reply was logical. Shut up. One more word and I'll punch you in the face. If that will help calm you down, then go ahead, Jinbei welcomed the idea. I may be hurt, but I won't let you defeat me in this state. At that moment, Luffy charged at Jinbei, but Jinbei caught him effortlessly and threw him to the ground. Cough. Luffy coughed violently. Jinbei. On my journey to hunt down Teach. I met my little brother again after 3 years. I found him in the kingdom of Alabasta. Jinbei remembered what Ace had told him when they were imprisoned in Impel Down. The moment I saw him, I felt relieved. Do you know why? Luffy interrupted Jinbei's memory by biting his arm at that moment. That hurt. You brat. Can you not see anything at all? Fishman Island. Who would have thought it would come to a fight between you and Luffy? Fisher Tiger was shocked by the scene. It seems the situation has gotten much worse. Jinbei nodded in agreement. His teeth are strong, judging by your expression, his bite must have been pretty painful. New Arlong, your counterpart has also dealt with Luffy's bite before. Shut up, both of you. I'm sure the pain in his heart is far greater than the physical pain, Jinbei said with sorrow. That's true, but what did Ace mean when he said he felt relieved after meeting Luffy in Alabasta? Did something change? Of course, a lot has changed. His crew, his friends, right? That's right, maybe that's why Ace felt at peace. Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe Ace would have said something else. Not far from the Fishman group, Frankie was reading the manga with tear-filled eyes. Even those who weren't emotional or directly connected to Luffy were affected by his current state after losing his brother. Frankie, who was practically family to Luffy, was no exception. Damn you, Jinbei. Is this how you save the situation? By beating him? Frankie yelled, feeling the urge to confront Jinbei, who sat a few tables away. Hold on, what are you trying to do, you troublemaker? Iceberg grabbed Frankie by his shirt before he could approach the fishmen, who had already overheard his outburst and were glaring back at him. Sometimes, certain tough problems can only be dealt with using force. You need to understand that. Tom lightly hit Frankie on the head, causing him to groan in pain. Luffy can't see anything right now, just as Jinbei said. He's surrounded by dark clouds, unable to find the light. The only way for him to see it is through hardship. In order to remind him of what he's lost and what he still has, this method is necessary. It's all for his own good. Alabasta Sky Island. High above the sea, the once sand island was now a green paradise stretched for hundreds of kilometers, dotted with white clouds and blue lakes. All kinds of animals thrived here, whether desert dwellers or not. The kingdom of Alabasta resembled a miniature version of the ancient kingdom that had been famous 800 years ago, a heaven on earth. In the heart of Alyabarna, the crowd gathered inside the famous art store. Among them were King Cobra, his wife, and their 2-year-old son. What a tragic state this boy has fallen into, his joyful spirit unmatched by any. Cobra sighed as he watched Luffy's suffering. He just lost his brother. It's impossible to get over such an ordeal easily, Cobra's wife replied sorrowfully. But Jinbei is trustworthy. He would never abandon him, especially since Ace before he died, asked him to help his brother. Let's see how things play out from here on. Suddenly, Cobra smiled as he noticed an exciting turn of events. He wasn't the only one smiling. All the readers in Alabasta felt a warm emotion when they saw the scene. Luffy finally remembered the people he'd forgotten about. Just as they began to fade from memory. Shomatsuki Town. Is he finally remembering? He's emerging from the clouds of despair, isn't he? I wonder what Zoro will do when he finds out what his captain had to endure. I bet my son will steal Mihawk's boat and find a way to get to Luffy as fast as possible. Well, that is, if he doesn't lose his way. Everyone knows your son has a terrible sense of direction, just like you. Tara laughed after seeing her husband's embarrassment when she mentioned his poor navigation skills. It may be hard right now, Luffy. But you must silence those thoughts. Jinbei continued shouting, his words piercing straight into Luffy's heart. Stop counting only the things you've lost. What's gone is gone. So ask yourself this. What is it that remains with you? At that moment, Jinbei let go of Luffy. Luffy fell to the ground, sitting down. He counted on his fingers, and tears began to fall before he said, I still have my friends. Images of his entire crew appeared in the background. I see, Jinbei smiled after hearing that. Zoro. Nami. Usopp. Sanji. Chopper. Robin. Frankie. Brook. I still have, all of you. There's a place where we all decided to meet up. That's where I have to go. I'll tell you what I saw there, Jinbei. The Luffy I remembered, the kid who always hid behind my back, was nowhere to be seen. He had found himself a crew of wonderful friends. So no matter what happens, he'll be okay. That's why. I felt so relieved. It was as if Ace was guiding Jinbei on how to pull Luffy out of that dark state. When he finally succeeded, Jinbei let out a sigh of relief and sat down. Phew. I want to see them again. Luffy screamed with all his might. Batarilla, inside the art store. Roger smiled as he watched the scene. It looks like Luffy has finally found his way again, he said with a big grin, clearly happy for him. Luckily, Jinbei was there. Shanks smiled as he said that while watching the same scene. It seems Ace really did feel at ease when he saw Luffy's friends, which is why he kept pushing forward. Rayleigh sighed, saying this. It only makes sense that Luffy wouldn't be alone. He said it himself before, that being alone is worse than getting hurt. Gabon felt moved remembering those words from the 7-year-old Luffy. In Rouge's home, the atmosphere was calm. Ever since she found out she was pregnant with not just one but two, she didn't know how to act or how to tell her husband, as it was shocking and unexpected news. This is good. It's wonderful to see Luffy take steps forward and remember what he still has. Seeing this scene, Rouge sighed in relief, just like Jinbei did in the manga. You still have your friends. And I still have my husband, my friends, Ace, and perhaps a new child. I still have everyone. I haven't lost anything. Rouge smiled, and finally, the heavy burden on her heart disappeared completely. Chapter 807, The Arrival of Rayleigh. Chapter's Events. The Calm Belt. Look! It's a gigantic sea king. What's happening? Is it fighting something? Trafalgar Law's crew spotted a terrifying sea king battling something unknown, which ended with the sea king's death. It's dead. Something killed it. A monster that size. I couldn't see what it was fighting. This ocean is terrifying. At that moment, a man emerged from the sea beneath the cliff, shocking Trafalgar Law's crew. Wah! A man? Hey! Who are you? My, oh my. The man easily climbed the steep cliff, recognizing Trafalgar Law and his crew. Ah, I know you. We met at the Sabaody archipelago. Wah! Dark King Rayleigh. The Heart Pirates were stunned when they recognized the man. Well, you see. I ran into a nasty storm at sea. My boat sank, so I had to swim the rest of the way. My body doesn't move like it used to. I'm really getting old. Rayleigh had swum all the way here, without a boat or anything else, leaving Law's crew speechless. A storm? But there are no storms in the calm belt. Which means, your boat sank outside the calm belt, and you swam all this way? So, the one fighting the Sea King. Was that you as well? Rayleigh ignored Beepo and the others, staring intently at Law. Now then. I'm guessing Luffy Kuan is somewhere on this island? Flevance Island. Reading One Piece manga had become a monthly celebration in this beautiful country a long time ago. At this point, the passion of the people of Flevance, including the nation's ruler, was focused on keeping up with the latest developments in the story. Where was it heading? No one knew for sure, but nothing was certain anymore. However, the people of Flevance weren't as interested in where the story was headed or what would unfold after the epic events of the Great Summit War. They were more concerned about Luffy's situation and whether he would continue his journey. At that moment, readers inside the iconic art store were both shocked and excited. Oh my god! Is that Rayleigh? He swam all the way to the island? Impossible! How could that even be? Impossible? This is the Pirate King's right-hand man we're talking about. Do you think he's just an ordinary character? Swimming across hundreds of kilometers isn't impossible for him. It's unbelievable. He even killed the Sea King on his way here. Ha ha. Your reactions match Beepo and the others perfectly. Just look at Trafalgar Law staying so calm in such a situation. Most readers were stunned by the scene, realizing for the first time that there was someone in the world capable of swimming from one island to another, a feat typically reserved for fishmen. Yet here was a human doing it with nothing but physical strength. At home, the small Trafalgar family had just finished breakfast and returned to reading the latest manga chapters. For them, the previous chapters were tragic. After all, Luffy had been suffering greatly. Now, the spotlight was back on their son in the manga, bringing bright smiles to both the mother and father. It seems Law is confused about why Dark King Rayleigh is here looking for Luffy, don't you think, dear? Mary asked curiously. That's true, but maybe he has some idea of what's going on. Chris nodded in response. So, what do you think, darling? Mary asked lovingly as she nursed their baby since little Law hadn't had his breakfast yet. Chris wiped his lips from the food crumbs before saying, I think it's time for Luffy to get some real training from a true expert. Amazon Lily. Gloriosa and Shaggy smiled as they watched Rayleigh emerge from the sea onto the shores of the women's island. Fufufu, unbelievable, even after all these years, that man still prefers swimming all the way here, Shaggy chuckled, silently praising her foolish but beloved old man. Rayleigh-san is truly unimaginably strong, Gloriosa also praised Rayleigh. So, Rayleigh-san is searching for Luffy. I wonder why, little Hancock pondered curiously. Oh, what a silly fool woman. Her cute face suddenly turned bright red as she saw her counterpart's actions in the manga again. In the following scene, after Rayleigh arrives where Law and his crew are, Hancock appears, leading a convoy of food to Luffy, continuing to argue with the old Gloriosa that doing all this for Luffy didn't mean they were married. Hancock quickly tried to refute Gloriosa's words by questioning what more she had to do to make them married. That's really a tough question. But... Ha ha. Gloriosa repeated the same response as her older counterpart before chuckling at little Hancock's adorable reaction. Fufufu, this amount of food is enough to make Luffy accept Hancock as his wife. Shaggy laughed, referring to the food convoy Hancock was delivering to Luffy at that moment. He must be very hungry right now. Hearing this, little Hancock became even more embarrassed. Luckily, Rob wasn't present, or he might have broken something out of anger. Batterilla Island. Oh, so the time has come? Rayleigh smiled as he watched his older counterpart reach the place where Luffy was. Wow, old Rayleigh is still so strong. Shanks' eyes sparkled as he admired Rayleigh's strength. Ah! I'm so jealous. Why don't I get to appear in these events at all? I'm starting to get a bad feeling, my counterpart must have already died. Gabon expressed his jealousy once again, as he always did whenever Rayleigh appeared without him. Oh, look at the look in Luffy's eyes when he saw you, even after coming out of such an emotional breakdown. Roger commented with a smile when he saw how Luffy welcomed Rayleigh. So, it's finally time? I suppose you already know why your counterpart is searching for Luffy, don't you, Rayleigh? Roger added with a grin. Well, the boy can't keep crying and moping forever. It's time for some real training, don't you think? The teenage boy will finally become a man under my guidance, strong enough to conquer the entire new world. Rayleigh smiled, excited to see how he would train his counterpart, Luffy. Chapter 808, Usopp and Chopper's Reactions. Chapter Events. Are you absolutely certain about that? After a long conversation between Rayleigh and Luffy, Rayleigh understood that Luffy wanted to reach the Sabaody archipelago as quickly as possible to reunite with his friends. I'm sure you remember what happened to all of you on that island, Rayleigh said. Hearing this, Luffy recalled the tragedy that had befallen him and his friends at that time. Everyone. Getting out of here is all that matters right now. We can't possibly beat these guys. These were Luffy's words to his friends that day. Do you want to meet up with your friends, only to have that happen again? Rayleigh asked curiously. I have a proposal for you. Of course, it's entirely up to you whether to accept it or not. It's important to remind the boy of what he and his friends went through that day without having the proper strength, Rayleigh said with a smile, looking at the others. You have a point, that's true. It's wise to remind Luffy of his weakness back then, Gabon responded. The proposal you're going to make to Luffy is for him to train for a period before reuniting with his friends again, right? Shanks asked as he placed his hand on the straw hat on his head. That's already obvious to you? Rayleigh marveled as he glanced at Shanks. It doesn't make sense for Luffy and his crew to gather again without the ability to protect themselves, especially since the New World is not an easy challenge like the first half of the Grand Line. So, it's easy to predict Rayleigh-san's proposal based on that. Hearing this, Roger nodded with a smile. It seems like the first part of the Straw Hat Crew's story is about to end. Most likely, Rayleigh smiled as well. East Blue, Syrup Village. Inside an art store. What's going on with Usopp? Why has he gotten so fat? At that moment, Banshina's eyes widened as the manga shifted focus to the Boyne archipelago, where her son, Usopp, not only remained stuck but had gained so much weight that his appearance had changed. Pfft, ha ha ha. Ouch. Why are you hitting me? Usopp, who was laughing at his son's appearance in the manga, was hit hard by his wife, causing him to stop laughing instinctively. You're laughing at your own son, you fool. You didn't defend him from those strangers' laughter, but you're laughing too. Banshina's face looked fierce as she scolded her husband. Seeing this scene, Beckman felt relieved that he hadn't rushed into marriage yet. Usopp must have gotten quite comfortable there to gain so much weight. But why does he suddenly seem so hurried to leave the island? Could it be he received news of what happened to Luffy recently? Beckman wondered aloud. As expected, Usopp, still rubbing his head from the punch his wife had delivered, focused on what Heracles had just mentioned about the newspaper that had changed Usopp's mood. Usopp-un. Heracles caught Usopp, who had fallen into one of the island's plant traps. Whatever is the matter, Usopp-un? Heracles, in his peculiar manner of speaking, asked what had suddenly happened to Usopp. Ever since you read the newspaper that the news crew delivered here, you've been like a different man. A particular newspaper fell from Usopp's fat body, but he didn't care, he was crying then. I don't have time to waste hanging around this place. Luffy just lost his brother in that war. How much pain must he be going through right now? Usopp cried more and more as he thought about what Luffy must be suffering at that moment. If I'm not there for him when he's in pain, how can I call myself his friend? Tears streamed down Banshina's face as she witnessed this scene. At least you remembered you have a friend who's suffering, and you need to be by his side. But what can you possibly do for him in this situation? Banshina felt sad for Usopp, too, who seemed to have gained nothing from the time he had been given to train in this place. Let's look at it positively, dear. What just happened will motivate him to train and become the best version of himself. He's at his worst version right now. Can you imagine the Herculean effort he'll need to put in just to get back to where he was, let alone train even more to reach his best possible self? The effort will indeed be immense, but I trust my son. He'll succeed for sure. I'm excited to see the result. Usopp smiled as he said all this, which somewhat reassured Banshina. I'm more intrigued by this mysterious masked warrior named Heracles. Could he be part of the Revolutionary Army? Beckman asked with curiosity. Ohara. What's going on with Usopp? Why has he turned into such a fat person? Yahohoho. Brook laughed as he saw what Usopp had become after spending time on the Boyne archipelago. Ha ha. It seems Usopp gave in to the Luffy inside him and ate so much delicious food in the forest that he's now suffering from obesity, Professor Clover laughed. The important thing is that he's learned about the tragic events Luffy went through. Now, we'll see his true mettle. Whether he loves and respects his captain or his friend, as he described him, what he does next will reveal everything, Saul commented. The scene has shifted to Chopper. He also seems to be in a hurry to reach the Sabaody archipelago. It seems everyone has already received the news from the newspaper, Vegapunk noted, as the next scenes focused on the Torino Kingdom. Drum Island. Wait, what happened with Chopper? I hope he hasn't gotten fat like Usopp, Hiralik wondered. Don't be foolish. The worst-case scenario is that he was cooked and eaten by the Torino people, or perhaps devoured alive by the giant birds. Kureha's imagination was running wild. Thankfully, Chopper's luck isn't as bad as you two have imagined. Dalton, now 14 years old, sighed with relief as he saw that Chopper had done a good job. Oh, that's great. It seems he managed to resolve the conflict between the giant birds and the Torino people. But he also learned about what happened to Luffy. He wants to leave immediately. He even left, riding on the back of a giant bird. Kureha and Hiralik were left speechless. It looks like our Chopper will be the first to arrive at the Sabaody archipelago. But, it seems Luffy will change his mind and accept Rayleigh's offer. What will happen to Chopper when he arrives and finds no one? Wait, don't jump to conclusions. It looks like a new newspaper has already reached him just in time. I wonder what Luffy did to cause such a reaction from Chopper. All the readers in the art store on Drum Island fell into complete confusion at that moment. They were all filled with intense curiosity and immediately flipped to the next page. Chapter 809, Zoro and Nami's Reactions. What is this little girl saying? Why is she cursing me? In the central prison of Hunter's Island, inside the cell of Shiki and Moria, Moria stared at the events of Chapter 592 with wide eyes. Why is Perona saying that I'm dead? Huh? He couldn't believe what he had just seen. It seems like Doflamingo really finished you off, Jihaha. Shiki laughed mockingly at Moria's fate in the manga. After Shiki's remark, Moria recalled the final scenes of the last arc where Doflamingo had cornered him using the pacifistas. Moria's expression darkened with every word Mihawk spoke in the chapter about the false report in the newspaper, which claimed Moria had died during the Summit War, though, according to Mihawk, that wasn't the case. That's impossible. My counterpart wouldn't die that easily. Moria exclaimed. Hey, why do you think he didn't die? How could he survive such a certain death? Don't forget, the one tasked with killing you is the ruthless Doflamingo. And the world government already announced your death in the paper, which means your counterpart is already gone, that much is certain. The words of the Golden Lion, Shiki, were like knives stabbing Moria's heart, reminding him of the world government's cruelty. Well, maybe your place in the Shichibukai has already been taken by someone else, which is why they no longer need you. Ohara. The first scene of the chapter is reflected in Mihawk's hawk-like eyes at that moment. The mood his counterpart had in the manga seemed to perfectly match his current one. Strict, straightforward, and utterly unconcerned. But he seemed a bit sharper than usual at this point in time. Suddenly, he instinctively raised his eyes and his gaze fell on the pink-haired girl with large eyes, who was staring at him with a big smile. The little girl was sitting in her mother Melona's arms. Mihawk quickly averted his eyes and returned to look at the manga counterpart of the little girl, Perona. This girl will grow up to be quite the troublemaker, Mihawk thought to himself. Chapter's events. Much time has passed since you left my castle. Are you still loitering in a place like this, Roranoa? Mihawk glanced at the wrecked boat and then at Zoro, who was surrounded by armed baboons. It looked like he was having a tough time against them. It would appear that the boat I gave you will no longer be of great use, he added. Shut up. I can just treat it like a piece of wood, cling onto it, and swim. Zoro shouted angrily. Why are you in such a hurry? With wounds like those, no less, Mihawk asked curiously. You're the one who told me what happened to Luffy. How can I stay still after hearing that? I didn't even know about that massive battle. Zoro looked devastated at that moment. He wanted to be by his captain's side immediately, but deep down he knew he was already too late. When his captain truly needed him, he wasn't there. Concern for a friend is all well and good, but these beasts are not to be underestimated. Mihawk gestured toward the baboons. They are known as humandrels. Intelligent baboons that learn by imitating humans. He continued, it is said that if raised by gentle humans, they too will become gentle, but in a land like this. Come to my castle. They will not follow you there. Mihawk suggested. I don't take orders from you. I'm going to the sea. Zoro firmly refused. I see. Well, as you wish. It's impossible for him to listen to you in a situation like this. Zoro is the most loyal member of the crew to Luffy. All he wants right now is to reach his side. Isho smiled as he said this. I know, Mihawk responded calmly. But he will learn the hard way that what he desires and what he can do in his current state are two different things. He can't do anything. He added afterward. These baboons seem really intelligent. I've never seen anything like them in my life. Mihawk must have tamed them, Rosinante spoke with curiosity. Fufu, I wonder what Bartholomew Kuma was thinking when he decided to send Zoro here. Does he think Mihawk will train Zoro until he can defeat him and take the title of the world's greatest swordsman? Doflamingo said sarcastically. Hearing this, Mihawk glanced at Doflamingo and said just one word, he will. Isho smiled after hearing that. Isn't that more exciting? What is Zoro doing? Why is he fighting already? He still hasn't fully healed. In Shimatsuki town, the most significant reaction at that moment came from the Roronoa family. Tara placed her hand over her mouth, struggling to hold back her tears as she saw her son trying so hard to find his way back to his devastated friend. He must be desperate, Arashir sighed sadly. But what more can he do besides fighting the baboons? In his current state and with his current strength, he can't even defeat those baboons. What a disgrace. I mean, he should reach a level of power where he can defeat the spirit of those baboons with just a glance. As long as he still has to fight them hand-to-hand, he remains weak. After saying this, Shimatsuki Yoshimaru smiled at the image of Mihawk. That man is true strength. I hope Zoro can train under him. Is that even possible? They're competitors for the top, Kiriko asked with curiosity. At Zoro's current level, he doesn't deserve to be called Mihawk's competitor, so I don't see any issue with it, her older brother replied confidently. Back at the art store in Ohara, Belmir's laughter could be heard at this moment. Ha ha ha. That girl never changes. She still gets into trouble. She must have stolen something valuable to get locked up like that. The manga returned to Weatheria, where Nami's antics with the elderly dwarves, who were always easily deceived by her tricks, made Belmir laugh. Her tears right now are real, aren't they? Rob asked, patting Belmir's shoulder. The man mentioned in that newspaper, Luffy. He's the captain of my crew. Nami exclaimed. What? Herdos was shocked after hearing that. Oh my, what is this now? You mean the same man who stormed the battlefield in the recent war, the famous Straw Hat Rookie? With his entire crew separated across the sea. Luffy has been fighting a terrible battle all on his own. He joined the Ultimate War to save Ace. The news about what had happened had spread far, even reaching Herdos and his companions, who lived on a sky island. Don't worry about it. If we went to help him, he'd just get pissed off. Those were Luffy's words to his crew after noticing the abnormality in Ace's Vivre card after Ace's battle with Blackbeard. He lost Ace right in front of his eyes. And I didn't even know any of it was happening. Luffy will come to our meeting point, I know it. Nami cried, helpless. Before the pain shatters his heart completely. I have to find him and do whatever I can to help. Yes, although she doesn't look like it. After watching this scene, Bella responded to her husband's words. Her urgency to get to the meeting point is real. All for Luffy, she added. I bet Herdos and his companions will be furious after seeing a little girl successfully deceive them with her tears repeatedly. Ha! Rob laughed. The right thing for her to do right now is to stay here obediently and train to improve herself and her abilities, isn't it? Bella asked. Can you already see that? Yes, their luck has run out. Now, they must either rise to the challenge or perish. If they want to continue their adventures, they have to be strong enough. The new world won't be easy. They have to grow. I bet they won't reunite anytime soon. Sky Island Burka. What a reckless little girl. Ah. Didn't she like my rope trick? Why do I keep getting beaten up by her? My head starts aching just seeing the swelling on my counterpart's head. What's going on? Why is she crying like that? Ah, that's what you should do. Unlock the cuffs. Why are you restraining a little and beautiful girl like Nami in the first place? Ah dash. Herdos swallowed his words as he saw Nami holding him as a hostage, running off with everything she had stolen from Weatheria. Well, she must like me. That's why she kidnapped me, out of all these old men, ha. Chapter 810, Frankie and Brooks' Reactions. What is that fool doing? Vegapunk's eyes narrowed as he watched Frankie rampaging through his old lab in Baltimore on Karakuri Island. Ha ha ha. Looks like he couldn't resist the temptation. No wonder, after all, this place holds the research lab that you personally left behind. Clover laughed after seeing Frankie being chased by the Marines inside Vegapunk's lab. He might just destroy everything. That idiot. It's okay, this brings back a lot of memories. Vegapunk felt nostalgic as he looked at the place where he spent his youth. This unfinished thermal project, it's always been like a thorn in my heart because I never completed it due to a lack of resources. Maybe I should consider returning to Karakuri to finish it. Isn't sending one of your clones enough? At that moment, Rob sat beside them after overhearing the interesting topic they were discussing. Yes, sending Shaka might be a wise option, but returning in my main body isn't a bad idea either. Suddenly, Vegapunk's eyes twitched, and his long tongue spun quickly. His eyes almost fell out of their sockets in shock at what Frankie had done to his old lab. Ha ha ha. What a plot twist at this moment, Rob laughed at Vegapunk's hilarious reaction. Why would you even place a self-destruct button in your lab in the first place, he asked next. Well, the idiot did it. Don't ask me why I put a self-destruct button, it's a common measure to protect intellectual property. But it seems Frankie mistook the danger symbol for a pirate symbol. Did he think pressing that button would open a door to a fully equipped pirate ship? Clover wondered about Frankie's thought process at that moment. Darashishi. For some reason, this scene feels familiar. It's the same thing that happened with Chopper back then when he thought the danger symbol on the poisonous mushroom was a Jolly Roger. Saul laughed at the dark humor in this chapter, as Frankie accidentally destroyed the lab but appeared in the background giving a thumbs up with a smile. Well, he must have been in a hurry to reach Luffy, so his recklessness is understandable. Pa! But that doesn't mean he's not a big idiot. I'm starting to feel like I know who this boy's father might be. Vegapunk slammed the table in front of him as the face of an old foolish acquaintance flashed before his eyes, someone whose foolishness was 99% similar to Frankie's. Chapter's events. This stuff is super impressive. And this is just the stuff he came up with when he was a kid? Frankie was astonished as he delved into Vegapunk's old journals inside his lab. There are blueprints here that won't be feasible to build for another 200 or 300 years. As an engineer, I can certainly see why people wouldn't want anyone touching this place. While Frankie was lost in searching for anything that might help him in his current situation, the Marines were still tracking his whereabouts. If you happen to damage anything in the Genius House while pursuing the criminal, you will be held responsible. Yes, sir. The Marine officer warned his squad to be cautious inside the lab. An intruder in the lab? This is terrible. Every last one of those blueprints is utterly priceless. Outside, the residents of Karakuri discussed the immeasurable value of what was inside the lab blueprints and other inventions, unaware of what Frankie was about to do. HM. A pirate symbol? Inside the lab, Frankie's attention was drawn to a button with a danger sign, which he confused for a pirate symbol. For that reason, he pressed it. The result was a devastating explosion, destroying the lab and leaving Frankie's fate unknown. This is the infamous Future Country incident, known to the world as the Nightmare of Baltimore. Can I ask just one thing? If by some crazy chance, I did accidentally push that switch. The eyes of the people outside widened, and their mouths dropped open in absolute shock at the sight of the explosion. Marine HQ. This is Baltimore. We have a catastrophic incident. The Marines stationed there quickly rushed to report the event to headquarters. Would you blame me? Urura Island. It's impossible for this level of stupidity to be natural. Queen's eyes widened as he saw what Frankie had just done in the manga. Mohahaha. Impressive. What unbelievable luck this Frankie has. He was just thrown into a treasure mine to power himself up, but he destroyed it completely. What incredible humor the Straw Hat Pirates possess. Queen then laughed heartily at Frankie's actions. Is this guy seriously laughing at Frankie? I see they're exactly alike. It's like they could be father and son. Kaido pointed at Queen as he spoke to King at that moment. He might be his lost son, Kaido-san, the one he told us he abandoned years ago. Who knows? King shrugged his shoulders as he said that. Only Queen knew the truth of the matter. Fishman Island. Your counterpart caused the nightmare of Baltimore. Who knows how many valuable blueprints Vegapunk had stored there from his youth, how many superior artifacts and countless innovations were in that lab. Your counterpart destroyed them all in a moment because of his stupidity. Frankie looked at his teacher, Tom, and repeated the same thumbs-up gesture his counterpart made, with a wink and a smile. Pa! Arg! That hurts, you jerk. Why did you hit me? Frankie yelled at Iceberg, who lightly smacked his head. The teacher wants to tell you not to learn from your counterpart, his actions are dangerous. Iceberg said with a calm expression. That's right, Frankie, your counterpart is a complete idiot. In the past, he stood in front of the sea train with a flesh and blood body as if he could stop it. I know he did it to save me, but in the end, it was a useless act of foolishness, not a sacrifice. Tom paused for a moment, noticing Frankie's expression change before continuing. And now, he pressed the self-destruct button without any hesitation. His fate will surely be worse than what happened in the sea train incident. I doubt he'll have any human flesh left after this, except for his brain. Do you think this is funny? It's absurd. Don't learn from your counterpart, he's a huge fool. That's impossible. My counterpart is super awesome. Where's the awesomeness? I don't see it. Grab him. As soon as they were released, they rushed to capture Brook. Why? But why? What on earth is happening? Brook was shocked, caught completely off guard. We don't believe in demons, stupid. Oh? You're pretty tough, but if we tie you up, you can't do a thing. If we bring a mysterious pile of moving bones like this back to the motherland, we can make a fortune. The trio ran away with Brook tightly bound. Satan-sama. The tribe members who had summoned Brook were confused. Wait a moment. I have to get back to my... Brook was silenced before he could finish speaking. Satan-sama has been captured. Everyone. We must prepare for another summoning. Brook was immediately forgotten. Luffy-san. When things get tough, let us sing. It is for such times that we musicians exist. I will be with you as soon as I can. Finishing his inner monologue, Brook shouted. Luffy-san. Help me. Back in Ohara, the readers were laughing hard after Brook, or Demon King Satan as the villagers had named him, made his appearance. Yah-ho-ho-ho. It seems my counterpart is handling his events quite well. Brook laughed as he watched the tribe praising him after he helped them capture the long-armed tribe members who had been causing trouble. It seems he's also received the news about what happened to Luffy. Brook glanced at the newspaper his counterpart was holding in his hand. I bet he'll say his heart is broken, even though he doesn't have one. Ha ha. See? Rob found it impossible for Brook's scenes to be as dramatic, so he focused on the facial expressions of those around him, who were waiting to see Brook cry over what happened to Luffy or something like that. But they slapped their foreheads in disappointment when the final scene showed Brook asking Luffy to rescue him instead after being captured and kidnapped by the long-armed trio. Brook was truly pathetic. That wraps up this part of What If Becoming a Mangaka in One Piece World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.